The silent room. The room was quiet. So quiet that even the steady sound of the hospital monitor felt like a loud reminder of fear. People had whispered rumors for days, but no one believed it at first. Keanu Reeves, the man known for strength, kindness, and calm presence, had fallen ill. Not a small sickness, but something that left him weak in a hospital bed. Fans outside stood in silence, holding candles, unable to imagine their hero in such a fragile state. Inside, the white walls of the hospital seemed colder than usual. The smell of disinfectant filled the air, and the fluorescent lights flickered as if even the electricity could not carry the weight of the moment. Keanu lay there, his face pale, his breathing slow but steady. His eyes, usually filled with life and quiet wisdom, stayed closed as machines kept watch over every heartbeat. The news had spread quickly, and people wondered who would come. Many thought he would be surrounded by producers, actors, or even directors who owed their careers to him. But the first to step into that silent room was not who anyone expected. When the door opened slowly, the nurse looked up in surprise. It was Sandra Bullock. Her face was filled with quiet worry, her steps unsure but determined. She clutched a small bag in her hand, not filled with gifts or flowers, but simple things: a notebook, a pen, and a folded piece of cloth. She had heard the news late at night, and without waiting for the morning, she rushed to the hospital. Her memories of Keanu went far beyond Hollywood lights. They had shared laughter on sets, quiet talks between scenes, and moments of friendship that never faded. When others drifted away with fame, she always knew Keanu remained humble. And now, seeing him like this, her heart felt heavy, almost breaking with every step closer to his bed. "Keanu," she whispered softly, as if her voice might disturb his fragile rest. Her words carried a weight, a mixture of fear and care, the kind of tone one only uses when the moment feels bigger than life itself. The nurse glanced at her. "He hasn't spoken much. But sometimes when someone close talks, we see a change." "You can stay." Sandra pulled the chair closer, her eyes not leaving his face. She remembered how he had always been there when others needed help, often without asking for anything in return. He was the kind of person who gave quietly, never demanding recognition. And now in this room it was her turn to give back, not with fame, not with words for the world to hear, but with simple presence, with kindness, with the steady comfort of a friend who never forgot. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached out. She did not touch his hand right away. She hesitated, afraid that her touch might remind her how weak he had become. But then, with quiet strength, she placed her hand gently over his. It was warm but fragile, like holding something too precious to ever lose. "You're not alone," she said in a soft voice. "You never were, and you never will be." The silence of the room seemed to change. The monitor beeped in a slower rhythm, steady and calm as if responding to her words. Outside the window, the first light of dawn broke through, spreading a soft golden glow into the cold hospital room. But then, as she sat there, something unexpected happened. Keanu's lips moved ever so slightly. No one else noticed, but Sandra leaned closer. Her breath caught in suspense. "Why are you here?" The words were faint, almost a whisper, but they carried more power than any loud cry. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. She had been strong walking in, but hearing him speak, hearing him question her presence with his old humility, shattered her defenses. "Because you would have been here for me," she replied. "Because you've always been there when no one else was. And because you don't have to fight alone." Keanu's eyes opened slowly, weak but filled with recognition. The weight of exhaustion covered his face. But in that single glance there was respect, there was trust, there was gratitude, and for the first time in days, he tried to smile. What neither of them knew was that this visit would not only change the path of his recovery, but also uncover hidden truths, old wounds, and new battles neither of them had ever prepared for. The story was only beginning, and the silence of that hospital room would soon give way to voices, secrets, and choices that would test both of them in ways they never imagined. The hospital became a place of whispers after that night. Nurses spoke softly in the hallways, reporters gathered outside the building, and fans held signs in silence, praying for news that he was improving. But no one inside that room felt the passage of time the way Sandra did. Every second stretched like an hour. Every breath he took carried the weight of both fear and hope. Sandra stayed by his side long after she thought she would. She told herself she would only sit for an hour, maybe two, but the hours passed unnoticed. Her chair creaked every time she shifted. Her back ached, but she would not leave. The thought of him waking up alone felt unbearable. The air inside the room seemed heavy with unspoken truths. Sandra knew Keanu as a man who never asked for help. He carried himself quietly, almost invisible when others shouted for attention. She remembered how on film sets, while others argued about lights and scripts, he would sit quietly, offering food to a tired worker, or sharing his coat with someone shivering in the cold. He had been the calm center of storms, and now she saw him caught in a storm he could not control. His eyes opened again during the night, and this time he did not ask why she was there. Instead, he studied her face with weak curiosity, as if he was searching for something in her expression. "You could be anywhere," he said slowly, his voice rough. "Why here?" His words hit her harder than she expected. Her throat tightened, but she answered, "Because you're someone worth being here for." The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with a tension that pulled both of them into the gravity of the moment. The machines beeped softly in rhythm, like background music to the emotions rising in the room. Sandra leaned forward, her voice trembling but honest. "Do you remember the time you waited with me when I was scared to go on set? Everyone else laughed at me, said I was too nervous, but you stood beside me without saying a word until I felt safe enough to walk out. I never forgot that. You gave me strength when I had none." Keanu blinked slowly, as if her words reached deeper than she realized. "I just did what anyone should do," he whispered. She shook her head. "No, not everyone does. You never ask for recognition. You never ask for thanks. But that's why it matters more." He closed his eyes again, but this time his hand shifted slightly beneath hers, pressing back with the smallest effort. It was weak, but it was there. The nurse came in quietly, checking the machines, adjusting the drip. She glanced at Sandra and whispered, "He responds more when you're here. Don't leave him alone." Sandra nodded, though her chest felt heavy with both relief and fear. She realized her visit had already begun to matter. But the night brought more than quiet moments. Outside, the media grew restless. Headlines flashed across screens, announcing Keanu's condition with no confirmed details. Rumors spread. Some claimed he was too weak to recover. Others insisted he was already improving. The truth, however, remained locked inside that one room where Sandra sat holding his hand. In the early morning, as the sky turned pale blue, something unexpected happened. A knock came at the door, soft but steady. Sandra looked up, surprised. Few people knew he was here. Fewer were allowed in. The door opened slowly, and a man stepped inside. It was an old friend of Keanu's, not from Hollywood, but from his quiet life away from cameras. His name was Michael, a man who had once worked with Keanu before fame took over. His eyes were tired, his clothes simple, his presence heavy with worry. "I heard," Michael said softly. "I had to come." Sandra stood, not knowing whether to let him closer. Keanu stirred faintly at the sound of his voice, as though recognizing a familiar echo from another life. "He needs peace," Sandra whispered, unsure if this visit would help or harm. Michael nodded, lowering his voice even further. "Peace is why I came. He once gave me everything when I had nothing. I owe him more than I can explain." Sandra studied him for a long moment before stepping aside. She did not want to guard Keanu like a possession. She knew Keanu valued connections, real ones, and this man carried the look of someone who carried a deep history with him. Michael sat on the other side of the bed, looking at his old friend with eyes filled with unspoken memories. "You always carried us, Keanu," he said softly. "Now let us carry you." Sandra felt her heart twist. Those words echoed her own thoughts, and suddenly the room no longer felt like a hospital. It felt like a place where lives, friendships, and hidden promises had gathered to fight for one man. Still, questions burned quietly inside her. Why was Keanu here, weakened like this? What had led him to this point? The doctors spoke in careful language, never saying too much, never giving full answers. Sandra began to suspect that there was more to his illness, something deeper, something not yet revealed, and she knew one thing: she would not leave until she found out. That morning, as sunlight spread across the floor, Keanu's eyes opened again. He looked at both of them, Sandra on one side, Michael on the other. His voice was faint but sharp with intent. "There are things you don't know," he whispered. The words hung in the air like a shadow stretching across the room. Sandra leaned closer, her pulse racing, knowing that what came next would not only change the way she saw him, but also reveal a truth that could either heal or break them both. The air inside the hospital room felt different after Keanu spoke those words. There are things you don't know. It was not only a sentence, it was a door opening into a place filled with secrets, shadows, and truths waiting to shake everything. Sandra sat frozen, her heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. Michael leaned forward, his eyes narrowed with worry. Neither of them spoke at first, afraid that even a single sound might close that door again. Sandra finally whispered, "What do you mean, Keanu?" Keanu's lips parted, but the strength in his voice faded quickly. He tried to speak, yet only a soft breath escaped, followed by a long pause. The machines beeped steadily, filling the silence with a rhythm that almost mocked the suspense in the room. "Don't push him," Michael murmured. "He's too weak," but Sandra shook her head gently, her eyes never leaving Keanu. Sometimes the weight of silence is heavier than the truth. "He wants us to know. Let him speak." Keanu's eyes moved slowly from one friend to the other. There was pain in them, but also determination. His voice came faintly, but each word carried a weight that cut deep. "I didn't tell anyone. I knew people would worry. But this sickness, it isn't just sudden. I've been carrying it for months." Sandra's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "Months! Why didn't you say anything?" His faint smile was full of humility, the same humility that had always defined him. "Because people already carry too much. I didn't want to add to their burdens." The words shattered Sandra. She felt anger rise inside her, not at him, but at the kindness that sometimes turned against him. She whispered fiercely, "You think you're protecting people by hiding your pain, but don't you see? The ones who care about you, they break when you hide. They would rather carry the truth than be blind to your suffering." Keanu closed his eyes again, exhausted, but the weight of her words reached him. His hand trembled under hers, not pulling away but holding on weakly, as if he wanted her to anchor him in this storm. Michael leaned closer. "Keanu, do you remember years ago when I had nothing? You gave me shelter, food, and dignity. You told me not to face struggles alone. Why don't you follow your own advice now?" A shadow of regret crossed Keanu's face. He whispered, "Because it was easier to give than to receive." Sandra felt her chest tighten. That single sentence spoke louder than any explanation. He could give endlessly, but when it came to himself, he could not accept kindness. The nurse came in briefly, checking the monitors, then quietly left. The room returned to silence, but it was not empty. It was heavy with emotions circling unspoken. Sandra wiped her eyes and leaned closer again. "Listen to me, Keanu. You are not a burden. Your pain doesn't make you less. It makes you human. And humans are not meant to suffer in silence." Keanu's lips parted again, but this time he did not speak of weakness. His eyes glistened as he whispered, "I was afraid of what people would see if I let them too close." Sandra's hand tightened around his. "What I see right now is a man who gave his whole life to others, who never let pride or fame change him. I see someone worth fighting for. Nothing can make me see less than that." Her voice cracked at the end, but she didn't care. The truth was spilling out, raw and unpolished, but powerful. Suddenly, Keanu's monitor beeped faster, the rhythm sharp and urgent. Sandra's heart leapt in fear. Michael shot up from his chair, calling for the nurse. Doctors rushed in, their voices calm but firm, adjusting wires, checking vitals, moving with precision. Sandra stepped back, trembling, tears spilling uncontrollably. She whispered under her breath, "Please, not now." "Not like this." Michael placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "He's stronger than we think. He's fought too much in silence to give up now." After long minutes, that felt endless. The monitor steadied again. The doctor looked at both of them. He's stable for now, but he's at a point where emotional stress can push him too far. Be careful with what you bring into this room. They both nodded, but the warning only deepened the tension. Sandra realized every word, every memory, every secret mattered now. Each could either break him or give him strength. When the room was quiet again, Keanu opened his eyes slowly, weak but alive. His voice was faint, yet it carried something heavier than before. I can't fight this alone anymore. But there's something else. Something I need to confess before time runs out. Sandra and Michael leaned in, their breaths caught, knowing this was not just about sickness. It was about a truth long buried, one that could change the way they saw him forever. His voice cracked as he whispered, "There's a letter. I never gave it, and it's for someone who deserved to know the truth long ago." The words sent chills through Sandra. A hidden letter. A truth untold. Her eyes widened as questions flooded her mind. Who was the letter for? What truth was so heavy he carried it even while hiding his illness? And why now, at the edge of weakness, did he finally decide to reveal it? She felt the suspense build like a storm ready to break. Whatever that letter contained, it would not only change Keanu's story, it would change hers too. The silence stretched again, but this time, the air in the room pulsed with suspense. The letter was real, and soon someone's world was going to change forever. The mention of the letter turned the hospital room into something more than a place of sickness. It became a chamber of secrets, where silence was no longer just silence. It was a ticking clock. Sandra's breath grew heavy as she stared at Keanu. Her mind raced in every direction. Was the letter about love? About family? About regret? She could not know. But the sharp edge of suspense cut through her chest like a blade. Keanu's eyes half closed again, his strength fading. The sound of the monitor filled the pause between them, each beep like a reminder that time was running out. Sandra leaned closer, whispering with urgency. "Keanu, where is the letter? Who is it for?" His lips parted, but no words came out. Only a faint exhale that carried exhaustion. He was slipping back into silence. Sandra felt panic crawl up her spine, but Michael placed a steadying hand on her arm. "He will tell us when he can," Michael said softly. "Forcing it now might break him." Sandra wanted to argue, but the truth in Michael's tone stopped her. She nodded slowly, though her heart pounded with impatience. For the rest of the morning, the room was filled with a strange mix of waiting and remembering. Sandra tried to keep Keanu awake by talking about their old days, those moments between takes when they laughed at small mistakes, when they ate meals sitting on crates instead of tables, when he would surprise crew members with kindness no one expected. "Do you remember?" she said quietly. "When you gave your jacket to the cameraman during that freezing night shoot. Everyone thought you would just go back to your trailer, but you stayed until the sun came up." Keanu's eyes flickered with recognition, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "He was colder than me," he whispered. Sandra shook her head with a faint laugh through her tears. "You always say things like that, as if your own suffering never mattered." The door opened suddenly and another figure entered the room. It was a woman, tall, dressed in simple clothes, her face worn with years of life's struggles. Her eyes locked on Keanu instantly, and she gasped softly. "I came as soon as I heard," she said, her voice trembling. Sandra rose from her chair, unsure who this was. "Are you family?" she asked cautiously. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "No, but I owe him more than I can ever repay." Keanu stirred faintly at her voice, his lips moving weakly. "Lena." Sandra froze. The name fell heavy into the room. This was not just anyone. This was someone tied to the very letter he had spoken about. Lena rushed to his bedside, her hands trembling as she reached for his arm. "You saved me once, Keanu, when no one else would even look at me. You gave me a chance when I had nothing. I never forgot. I've been searching for a way to thank you, but now I see you like this." The room was silent, yet the silence carried more weight than any storm. The letter lay in Lena's trembling hands, its paper fragile, but its meaning heavier than any of them could measure. Keanu's eyes, weak but aware, stayed fixed on it. He had hidden those words for years, but now the moment had arrived. Sandra leaned closer to him, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "Do you want her to read it now?" His lips parted, his breath uneven. "Yes." "It's time." Lena wiped her tears with shaking fingers. Her chest rose and fell as if she were preparing to step into a place she had feared for years. Finally, she broke the seal carefully, unfolding the paper with slow reverence. Her eyes scanned the first lines, and at once her lips trembled. She let out a soft gasp, and tears streamed down her face. "What does it say?" Sandra whispered. Lena swallowed hard and began to read aloud, her voice cracking. "Dear Lena, if you are reading this, it means I never found the courage to say these words to you face to face. Years ago, when you were lost and broken, I offered you a hand. I told myself it was only kindness, but the truth is you saved me more than I saved you. In your struggle, I saw a mirror of my own pain, and in helping you, I found strength to keep going. I never told you this because I thought it might burden you, but the truth is simple. You reminded me what it means to live with purpose. Without you, I would not be who I am. I owe you more than I can ever repay. If I leave this world without saying it, let this letter remind you that you are not forgotten. Not by me, not ever." The words broke the room. Lena pressed the paper against her chest, sobbing openly. Michael's jaw tightened as tears filled his eyes. Sandra reached for Keanu's hand, her own tears falling silently. Keanu's weak voice filled the room. "I didn't want her to carry the weight of my gratitude. I thought silence would protect her, but silence became my prison. I needed her to know." Lena fell to her knees beside his bed, clutching his arm. "You changed my life, Keanu. I thought I was nothing, but you gave me a chance to stand again. And now you tell me I saved you? No, you were the light when my world was only darkness." His pale lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then maybe we saved each other." Sandra could not hold back anymore. She leaned close to his ear and whispered, "You see, this is why you should never hide your pain. The people who love you don't break when you share it. They grow stronger beside you." Keanu's eyes moved slowly to her face. His expression was weak, but his gaze was steady. "You stayed. Even when I asked why." Sandra smiled through her tears. "Because you always stayed for others. It was time someone stayed for you." The moment was heavy, yet strangely peaceful. The burden that had weighed on him for so long seemed lighter now, spoken and shared. The letter had not destroyed, it had healed. But life, even in peace, remained fragile. His breathing grew shallow again, his chest rising with effort. The doctor entered quietly, checking the monitors, his face solemn. He looked at Sandra, Michael, and Lena, then spoke softly. "He has given so much of himself. Whether he recovers now will depend not just on medicine, but on his will to keep fighting." They all leaned closer, as if their closeness could anchor him to life. Lena whispered promises of gratitude. Michael spoke words of brotherhood, and Sandra held his hand tightly, whispering, "We still need you. Don't let go." The night stretched endlessly. Every beep of the monitor felt like a countdown, every breath a battle. But Keanu held on, not just for himself, but because now he was no longer carrying the truth alone. By dawn, the first rays of sunlight broke into the room, warm and golden. Keanu opened his eyes slowly. He looked at Lena, then Michael, then Sandra, his gaze soft but filled with a quiet fire. "I'm not done yet," he whispered. "I still have more to give." Relief poured through them like a flood. Sandra buried her face in her hands, sobbing with joy. Michael let out a heavy breath, his shoulders finally relaxing. Lena kissed the back of his hand, whispering, "Then we'll walk this road with you every step." Outside, the crowd of fans continued to wait, unaware of the battle that had just been fought inside. Not only against sickness, but against silence, fear, and secrets. Keanu was still weak, but something had shifted. The man who once hid his pain to protect others had spoken his truth, and in doing so, found strength in the love that surrounded him. For the first time in months, hope filled the room, steady and alive, and as Sandra sat beside him, still holding his hand, she whispered softly, "This isn't the end. It's a new beginning. Keanu's faint smile deepened, and with eyes half closed, he whispered back, "Yes, a new beginning." The story that had begun in silence now ended in light, fragile but unbroken, with truth finally free.